Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the November 26, 2024 meeting of the Fond du Lac City Council. The first item of business is roll call, which is done electronically, and I will declare a quorum present with Mr. Schisler absent. The next item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, which is followed by a moment of silent reflection. Please rise. Next on our agenda is public hearings, and we have none, so we will move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda finalizes the proposed actions of the meeting, A, November 13th, 2024 minutes, and B, list of claims dated November 20th, 2024. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion by Mr. Mullins, second by Mr. Godfrey. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, please proceed to vote. And that passes unanimously. Next on our agenda is audience comments, agenda and non-agenda items. The presiding officer will limit speaking time for non-agenda items to 1 minute and items noticed on the agenda to 5 minutes. Ms. Hefter, do we have anyone wishing to speak? We do not, so that concludes our audience comments. Next, we'll move on to our action items. Action item A is resolution number 9152, a resolution making appointments to the City Plan Commission and Police and Fire Commission, with our introduction by our city manager, Mr. Moore.
Good evening, everybody. And since I won't have a chance to speak again, I hope you have a great holiday. We've got 2 nominations for you tonight. Ms. Geezy Kent for Plan Commission, and you can see on her application she's got some good experience. One thing that's not reflected there is she also has worked in economic development for quite a bit of her career, and also Mr. Dragella for the Police and Fire Commission. I recommend approval for both of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion,
I'll second it.
motion by Mr. Heisler and second by Mr. Zimmerman. Is there any other discussion or questions? Seeing none, please proceed to vote. And that passes unanimously. Item B is resolution number 9153, a resolution to update and adopt the 2025 to 2029 Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan, Corp. Of the City of Fond du Lac. Our introduction is by our Director of Public Works, Mr. DeVries.
Thank you, President Brault. So the plan before you tonight will guide our next 5 years in the park system. And we redo it every 5 years. And it really is a good planning document for us, and also kind of lays out some of the capital improvements. One of the things that we have this for is to obtain grants. So the DNR will look for this and be like, you have a plan in it. Is the project in the plan, and we can obtain grants from the DNR for projects in the future. And we've been very successful. John and his team have done a great job at getting those grants. This process started probably 2 years ago already, when we worked with the Advisory Park Board to do a comprehensive inventory of all our parks. So each meeting, we would assign a couple parks for the members to go out, take a look at, do an inventory, kind of mark, hey, here's what things could be improved, or maybe it's a minor thing, or maybe it was a major item that we would want to improve or add to the park. So we did that over the course of 2+ years, and we had some great feedback from not only the park board members, but also when they were out and about, they would run into people that are using the park and gather feedback that way as well. So that was really helpful. And then basically, John and I took that information and kind of put it together in the document and updated it. So I want to thank John for that as well. He put a lot of effort into the plan and getting it updated. And then you'll see in the plan, we also have, along with the inventory, we have recommendations for what's coming in the future. Tied to those recommendations, at the end was also a list of our capital improvement plan projects for the next 5 years. So that's something that you've seen before, going through the budget and CIP process. And a lot of what is in there came from this process with the park board. So recently, we had this at the park board, and they approved it, and the plan commission recently approved it as well. And so I would recommend approval by city council, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council? I'm not seeing any. I'll just ask, was there anything major that you'd like to highlight, to point out that's in the plan?
I think a couple of the items that we maybe are not, I don't know, well seen or known, but it was providing ADA access to the playgrounds. And so a lot of them were either just over ground or whatever, and that was noticed on a handful of parks that we wanted to provide that, smooth, not steep or bumpy surface. And that was one thing that will be a good improvement, while maybe not a major splash, but it would actually provide a lot of good accessibility for those areas. The other ones we looked at, we're looking at some improvements in Adelaide Park for maybe a parking lot over by the new pickleball courts. I think that was in there. And then just some playground resurfacing and playground updating. While John and his staff are out at the parks all the time, they may not see the same thing as someone that went to one of these parks 5 years ago and then all of a sudden sees this playground equipment and it's like, boy, that looks like it really kind of went downhill, and it's maybe not something high on our list. So things like that were definitely noticed and been able to put in the plan. John, is there any other? Oh, yeah, thank you, I'm sorry. That's not in our CIP yet, but one thing that the board noticed was, yeah, we have the name of the park, but we don't have, why it was named that, when it became a park, and some basic information. So right now, we're working with Ms. Benson and the Historic Preservation Commission on gathering data for an historical sign project. And so when we get that information, we will present that to the board and talk about what do we want to put on these signs, put them in the parks, and kind of get that ball rolling. And that will probably be a future either budget or CIP item. But it's kind of an exciting project to be able to do that. The other thing we'd do is, since the sign would be limited, we would work to update our website to have more information, if it's available, to put on the website. People can maybe do a QR code or a link or something to get to that. But so that'll be a fun project coming up.
Yeah, that'd be exciting to see, because I know when I was looking through the plan, I had to look up a couple of the parks because I wasn't even sure where they are in the community, because they're some of the newer neighborhood parks. So seeing some more information about them, I think, would be really cool for the community. And I wanted to point out something that I was excited about is it's on page 33 of the plan in the numbered list of items. Number 9 was that the city should consider converting some of its current mowed areas to native prairie and native tree or shrub plantings, especially where these restoration efforts would add beauty and buffer strips along riparian systems. And I think, first of all, that'd be a great environmental impact, and then also just having less that we'd have to mow in our parks while providing that extra benefit, I think, would be a really great improvement to our parks. So I'm glad to see that in there. Is there any other questions from council? I'm not seeing any, so I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Godfrey.
Second.
Who's got it? Second by Mr. Mullen. Is there any other discussion or questions? I'll just say thank you to Mr. DeVries and Mr. Redmond and to our park board for all the work that's gone into this plan. I know there's a lot of work behind the scenes on these things, so thank you very much. And with that, please proceed to vote. And my thing will fail on me. All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you. Item C is resolution number 9154, an initial resolution declaring, since the public interest requires it, a public way to be vacated in the area of Campus Drive from its termination to Prairie Road at 2 locations. And again, our introduction is by our Director of Public Works, Mr. DeVries.
Thank you, President Brault. I want to back up just one thing Mr. Moore reminded me about discussing our parks. Our holiday lights are being turned on, Thanksgiving. I want a big thanks to John and his crew. Everybody knows about the fire, and they've done a great job at getting replacement items put together, and just phenomenal job, and we look forward to seeing that show and all the lights in the park again. So, sorry for that detour, but, so this resolution is what we call initial resolution to vacate a portion of street right-of-way. This is out by the Fond du Lac County campus, and it was a street as of like 2002. And then at the time when the land to the east was developed, those streets were put through on Ducharme and Prairie Road. And there was no need for this to be a public street anymore. If you look at maps and that, you can see it's basically where the trail was put on top of where the road used to be. So if you walk through the Arboretum there, you will see where the actual old road was. But for whatever reason, the actual vacating of right-of-way did not take place. So technically, that is still a city right-of-way, public right-of-way. And the county has requested to vacate that. And so we're going through the process right now. And we don't have any issues with it, no need for the city to have utilities or anything like that in the future. So we're good with the vacating, and I believe this will come back to the council if approved in January for a public hearing and then final action on it. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion. Motion by Mr. Mullen. And second by Mr. Godfrey. Thank you. Are there any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, please proceed to vote. And that passes unanimously. Item D is ordinance number 3803, an ordinance repealing and recreating Chapter 690 floodplain zoning of the Code of the City of Fond du Lac. And our introduction is by our Community Development Director, Ms. Benson.
Thank you. Well. All that stands between you and a long holiday weekend is a 29-page, 15,751 word, 10-point font, single-spaced ordinance. So, let's talk about it. So, Chapter 690 regulates the floodplain within the city of Fond du Lac. It is required by the state of Wisconsin, and it is required by FEMA. From time to time, they send us a lovely notice saying we need to update ours. And it's usually based on when the flood insurance study gets updated or when our flood insurance rate maps get updated. In this case, only the study got updated, but our maps did not. So that means there's been no changes to where the floodplain is located within the city of Fond du Lac. However, the study's been updated, and so it's really more of the scientific background information, but it doesn't really change anybody's flood status in terms of the city. So we're required to update the new model ordinance. And there have been some pretty significant changes. And of course, understandable, over the course of time, what the flood insurance program tries to do is to mitigate loss. And so the requirements become more and more stringent in order to develop within the floodplain in order to mitigate that impact. And in addition to being required by the state, we're also a participant in the community rating system. And what that means, because we participate in that, and because we take our floodplain ordinance seriously and its enforcement seriously, we are able to save our property owners who have flood insurance through the National Flood Insurance Program anywhere from 10 to 15% on their insurance. Yes, I know that sounds like a commercial, but it's a great benefit to our property owners who do have that flood insurance. And so it's important as well that we maintain our current flood ordinance and that we adopt the new model ordinance. A lot of the content was there in the old one, but it's just been further clarified, enhanced, and detailed. The major change for those individuals who are looking to develop in the floodplain is really about the flood elevation and how far above it you have to be to develop. In the past, you only need to be 1 foot above the base flood elevation or regional flood elevation to build a occupiable structure. Now you'll have to be 2 feet. And so that will be an additional cost, an additional requirement on top of those developments, but again, it's intended to mitigate loss. There's additional requirements in terms of specifying what will be required for floodproofing, how that development occurs, and when you want to do certain studies that may impact the floodplain, either up or down river, and those are the hydraulic and hydrologic studies. And so that's really what it's all about. It's a great read. More than happy to entertain any questions, but really at the end of the day, this is something that we have to do, not only because we're required to do, but really for the benefit of our property owners.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council? I'm not seeing any, but Mr. Heisler has a question.
Thanks, Ms. Benson. Just one quick question. For folks who are already in and have existing insurance, does this change anything for them? Are they grandfathered in? How does that work?
Nope, so they are currently, there's no impact to them. So it's really just based on whenever you do new development. And basically we also have what it's called the Special Flood Hazard Area List. What happens when you're in the floodplain is we keep track of your improvements over time, forever. And so what that means, once you hit 50% of your equalized value, that means you have to bring your property, primarily your structure, into compliance with the floodplain ordinance. And so that has always been in place. That will be in place going forward. But for those people who are currently in the floodplain, currently have a home, this doesn't impact them unless they're planning on doing any major renovations or any major additions to their property.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So Ms. Panagopoulos, Ms. Hoffman had called me this afternoon about this ordinance that because of the length that Ms. Benson referred to, that we would be doing an approval tonight and then it would come back to us, I believe, at our next meeting. Could you explain?
So that's correct. If you vote tonight, you will be passing the ordinance. We are just changing the publication provisions as allowed under state law to be frank, to save some costs. Very long ordinance. An ordinance doesn't go into effect until we publish it. So usually we publish ordinances in its entirety. Now there's another provision under the code where we publish by notice. It will go on file with the city clerk for a 2-week time period. After that, in your December meeting, we will bring back a resolution just saying that we are ratifying the previous vote that will take place.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure council was all aware of that. Are there any other questions from council members? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Heisler and second by Mr. Godfrey. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, please proceed to vote. And that passes unanimously. With that, that ends our action items, and we do not have any input items on our agenda tonight. So I would also like to take the opportunity to say Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. I hope if anybody's traveling far that you have very safe travels. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Motion by Mr. Zimmerman, second by Mr. Heisler. This is not debatable. Please proceed to vote. And that passes unanimously. We are adjourned.
Like, Pat, don't hold us up, man. We're good. We're good.